much for coming on.
Well, thank you very much for having me. This has been pretty awesome to be here. I don't know how close I have to
That's
hold
good.
that. Is
Right there.
that
Yeah.
good? Okay, good. Yeah, no, I brought some props.
Good,
we can talk about them later. But
well, thank you very much, Heather, and good luck. And so, Brian, the first question I want to ask you is, you were in TV for 10 years.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that and how that was?
So I grew up here. I was born and raised here. And funny thing, in school, I was always interested in TV production. In fact, in high school, Amy Wegman from Fox 4, her and I actually anchored the morning news at Cape Coral High School.
Oh, wow.
And it was pretty cool. We were the Seahawks, so they called it Hawk News. And, I went into television. I worked for Wink as a camera guy behind the scenes for a little while. And I remember the day I wanted to go get on air, my first big on air job, right? And so Wink wouldn't do it because I was still finishing college, right? And they wanted, only college grads on the air, which is understandable.
Mm-hmm.
So I went over to Fox 4 and I said, hey, I'm finishing college. I'm going to finish college, but I want to get on the air. And I remember the boss at Fox 4, he said, all right, can I watch your demo tape in front of you? And I said, well, sure. I've got nothing to be ashamed of, right? He watches the tape, he pulls it out and says, well, I'm not going to hire you to be a news reporter.
Ouch.
And I said, all right. And he goes, would you like to be a sports guy?
Oh.
And I was like, wait, yeah, I would. And he goes, okay, we need a third sports guy. And so he brought me over to Fox 4 to be the roving sports reporter.
Oh,
and
cool.
The rest was history. I made it all the way up to be in the 5, 6, and 10 o'clock main news anchor for an ABC station that was in Joplin, Missouri. So,
oh, you went to Joplin?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
It's the only time I've ever lived away from the area. I lived in Joplin for about 4 years, and pretty cool. I worked with an ABC station out there, and really a neat experience to get away. And then when my wife and I decided we wanted to have children and start a family, we moved back here. This is the best place to have a family.
For sure. So what made you decide to run for office? I mean, how did you make the transition from TV to running for office?
Sure. It's something I've always been interested in. It's a habit that my dad modeled for me really early. He would take me with him to go vote. And so I always wanted to know, like, who are these people on the ballot? What do they do? And then, of course, when I got into television news, we covered local politics. And so once my TV news career ended, I was able to have an opinion on things, because I was back in news in the days when we were supposed to just report the news and not necessarily try and give an opinion. So I said, hey, I'm working in the business community. I'm making really good connections. I want to help. I want to be part of the future of Lee County. And so I started asking people about running for office. And next thing you know, I made a few great contacts, and God just led me in the right direction to run for office. And funny story, the person that I was going to run for her seat, it was Commissioner Hall.
Right.
She had some legal trouble and
Right.
had to resign. And after she resigned, Governor Scott appointed me to be the commissioner for District 4. It was really interesting how it worked out. And then we had one heck of a campaign in 2014. Really tough opponent, great guy who's in town here locally, but we won. And then in 2018, nobody ran against us. So I got reelected in 2018 with no opposition.
So you're good till 2022.
2022, yeah.
And well, I'll save that question for the very end. But I wanted to focus on what your thoughts are on how it seems like the public has turned on the media. Like, they don't trust them and they don't believe them. And I put a question on our Facebook page once: who do you believe more, politicians or the media? And it's almost like they feel like it's the same. What happened?
Yeah, I think some of the media has done it to themselves. I think it's hard to generalize. There are good reporters and there are bad reporters. There are, unfortunately, we've seen there are good cops and there are cops that aren't doing it the right way. And so it's hard to generalize just one profession. But I think some of the reporters who have not done it the right way, who have tried to interject too much of their opinion or tried to sway the story more than they need to, I think they've kind of made a bad name for everybody, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing too is when you talk about media, there's a lot that goes in that grouping, and it may not be the ones that are actually doing real hard news. It's
That's true.
fabricated or sensationalized, or
you hit the nail on the head.
Thank
So you
you.
got the 24-hour cable networks.
Right.
That's one group of folks. And then you got the local TV, which are usually a lot more straight up. The local news journalists are usually a lot less agenda driven than some of the national folks will be.
Well, the way that you've got around it kind of is you're a social media, you know how to use it. You use it to put information out for the county. You use it to, if I remember watching you go back and forth. I don't remember if it was Michael Braun or somebody else, but somebody put a story out that
Yeah.
you didn't agree with or you thought was factually incorrect, and you went right at it. You don't wait until the next time they interview you on TV. You've taken advantage of that. How important is that for
Well,
you?
I think that's the best thing about social media. You know, social media has a lot of bad, but I think one of the good things that it does have is it's given me a platform to go straight to the voters
Right.
and straight to the people that I serve with no filter in between. And so, I understand why the media is presenting numbers in a certain way, right? If I wanted people to tune in every day or read my paper every day, I'd present the numbers in a certain way. But if I wanted to bring the economy back, and if I wanted to just give people a sense of what's really going on, then I think I'd report the numbers more accurately and more correctly.
Before we get into that, one more question. What's it like to be the chairman of the commission?
Oh, it's cool.
I imagine so.
It's hard. I've had a really weird couple of years. Last year I was the vice chairman of the commission, and unfortunately Commissioner Kiker, who many of you know from the beach, got sick, and he passed away, and we all miss Larry very much. And so as the vice chairman at that point, I rose to the chairmanship, and I thank my colleagues on the board for giving me that opportunity. And so we carried out the rest of the Larry's year. And then this year in November is when I became the chairman. It would have been my normal turn in the rotation to be chairman. And so I was excited about this. We were getting ready to have a record-breaking year. January and February, you'll remember down here at the beach, was packed.
Crazy.
Things are going great. And I had made myself the chairman of the Tourist Development Council. So that's the cool part about being a chairman. You get to assign everybody's little committee.
You can keep the ones you want.
Yeah.
So you got a fun one?
Yeah, I picked the committee I wanted. I wanted to be the tourist development guy. And so, you get to work with people on the beach and all over. And so we were rocking. And then COVID-19 hits. And man, has it been weird ever since. So,
Dear?
Yeah. So regarding numbers and COVID-19, how do you think the numbers are going? I mean, we were just talking about this earlier. There's a little bit of distrust or misinformation, or people feel there's misinformation out there.
And you posted
them.
something yesterday on Facebook.
And you guys shared it too. So if anybody wants to see what I'm talking about, they can actually pull it up on your page and look at it more closely. But so one of the things I've been watching is our test positivity rate. So we're ramping up testing big time in Lee County.
Absolutely.
And, we wanted to know, as we ramp up testing and as we test more people, are we going to find just as many positive cases? I think you could imagine if you are taking a bigger sampling, you're going to find more cases, right? So we've been watching the test positivity rates. And so I'll show you the test positivity rates real quick. I think you can see that. So the test positivity rates for the last 7 days have been really flat. And really for the month of May, they've trended downward. We were seeing pretty high, above 10% test positivity rates towards the end of April. Once we got into that below 10% range, we became eligible to start reopening. That 10% target was a target the state and the World Health Organization and the CDC had all set as a target for reopening.
Okay.
And so we dipped below that, and we've been below it ever since. In fact, for the last 7 days, only 5.1% of the COVID-19 tests in Lee County have come back positive. So, and we've done more testing than ever. In fact, on the 28th of May, we got back results for almost 1,500 tests, and only 41 of those came back positive. So out of 1,500 tests.
So how is Dr. Antonucci feeling about all this?
I think he said a lot of what I'm saying here. I think he said that, look, we expected as we ramped up testing to find more new cases, but we're watching that positivity rate. And I think he even said something the other day about how it is good to get out and try and get some fresh air. I think he, like everybody in the medical community, wants to see people continue to take precautions.
Sure.
And you know what? Just because we're doing good doesn't mean you shouldn't try to protect yourself. I mean, nobody wants to catch this, right? I certainly don't.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm trying to do all the things that I should to not catch it, but I'm also making my own personal healthcare decisions, as I think other people should too.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, people, it's not only just this. It's not only COVID-19. It's flu. It's other issues that are going to come up, and this isn't the last time that we're going to see something come up. So people need to get in the mindset of really washing your hands, really, using hand sanitizer, being careful, staying home when you're sick, keeping your kids home when they're sick, and those kinds of issues. This is something that's going to be consistent now from time out.
And I think that's going to be one of the toughest ones for us as Americans, right? Is the staying home when you're sick.
Yeah.
Because I think we all kind of wear it as a badge of honor working.
Yeah, right. Let's go to the gym.
But really, honestly, the better thing to do from
Stay
now
home.
on is to stay home. If you've got some symptoms and you're sick, stay home and try not to spread that.
Are you happy with the way the governor has handled the reopening?
You know, I am. I don't want to criticize him. I think he's doing the best he can with the information he's gotten, with the diverse population that he represents as the governor. I think in Lee County, we would love to see things move even faster than they have, because I think we're seeing a lot of people really struggling that want to get back to work. But the governor, when you look at how Florida's done compared to many other states, we've done fantastic. I think the governor's move to really try and help out the long-term care facilities and the nursing homes right off the bat was fantastic. It was a game changer for us in Florida here. And you can see that in New York, where they had different policies, things turned out a lot differently.
Yeah, he brings up New York quite a bit when he's doing a press conference. So how damaging do you think that 8 or 10 weeks is going to be to Lee County economically?
Oh man, we did, and I brought the numbers. We did a little local program to try and provide individual assistance to businesses, and let me show you. So, you know, we wanted to provide individual assistance to people who needed help with their rent or mortgage or utilities. We also wanted to provide some relaunch grants to businesses in just the first week, and we started Tuesday when we took applications. We've taken almost 12,000 applications on the individual assistance side, and almost 4,000 applications on the business side. We shut that site down for the weekend. We had planned to do it because we need to work through some of these to make sure we'll have enough money left to take care of everybody. And we'll reopen the site on Monday morning at 8 a.m. It's called Lee Cares, and the website is leeflcares.com. And if you go there, you'll read all about it and find out if your business is eligible or if you personally are eligible. But man, it's devastating to see people line up for food. It's devastating to see people have to, you know, apply for rent and utility assistance in Lee County. We were rocking before this. I mean, we were rocking. We were at like 2.5% unemployment. People were working, and I think people want to work and they want to get back to work, and I want to get them back to work.
Right.
Within that Lee Cares program, what else is available? Because there were some other components of that program, correct?
Sure. You know, and this is the program that's still open over the weekend, is the personal protective equipment program. So this is a program that will get a kit of what they call PPE, like your mask, your gloves, your sanitizers, your disinfectants, delivered to a business. Now we geared it towards small businesses who may not have the resources for it or the buying power to get it. We did 200 kits on Thursday, another 200 kits on Friday, and we're going to try and deliver 300 kits every day of the week next week. So far, that amounts to like 70,000 masks, 117,000 gloves, 468 gallons of hand sanitizer refills, 468 liters of some hand sanitizer pumps, which, by the way, I got a comment on Facebook. Somebody said it's aloe vera infused. So nice call on that. I think we were just getting, you know, what we could buy at this point, because we know this stuff is so hard to come by. And then 2,100 N95 masks, too, to help out. And this is to help out businesses that, like medical businesses who maybe gave up their personal protective equipment to help the hospitals when we needed it, or you know, businesses that were completely closed that are doing personal services like hair salons and things like that are going to be in close contact with people.
How has the supply chain been for the PPE? Because you early on heard difficulty.
It's getting better. It's
Okay.
getting better. In fact, a lot of, you know, we've seen even a lot of distilleries locally have transitioned to making their own hand sanitizer. The sanitizer that we're using in our kits is actually from a local distillery as well.
Cool.
So it's pretty cool. So the supply chain is improving. We feel like as a county, we have better buying power, the ability to buy mass quantities of this stuff and then help get it out to some small businesses. You know, where they're placing smaller orders and may not be able to make those kind of.
Was that from the money that the federal government just happened to deposit into your account one day?
Yeah. So
I think Frank Mann was like, "No, give it back, because there's always going to be strings attached to it."
Well, there are, and this blew our mind. So you know, Hurricane Irma hit, and we just now got the last reimbursement from the federal government for Hurricane Irma. And that was back in 2017.
That was even that's slower than our roof. Wow.
Yeah.
So and I don't say that to pick on the federal government, but we got a form that says, hey, you're eligible for these CARES Act dollars because you're a county of more than 500,000 people. Fill out the form to make your request, and we did, and turned it in. And 8 days later, we got a direct deposit in the county's bank account for $134.5 million. The guidance was very slim in the beginning. It was, well, use it for COVID-19. And we're like, wow, okay.
Drive a truck through that.
Yeah, use it for COVID-19, and just know that we're going to audit you to see how you used it. And if you didn't use it the way we like, then we're going to ask you to pay it back. Well,
they came out with better guidelines.
That's a lot of money for us. So the guidance got better. They started to put together some more frequently asked questions and guidelines from the Treasury Department about what we should do with the money. We looked at what other counties around the state that were bigger than us that had the same kind of money we're doing with it. And we figured there's strength in numbers. So let's create programs that are similar to what they're doing. And if we're all kind of in the same boat, then maybe there's a better chance that it won't get clawed back. So we tried to design criteria that would protect the taxpayers of Lee County, but still help out the very small businesses that may not have been first in line to get that Paycheck Protection Program or some of the other federal assistance.
Right. So,
well, I'll ask a question.
Go ahead.
Is there a place where, if somebody's hurting, that they can go to, get all the information? Because I mean, somebody might think, okay, the United Way or Salvation Army, but you kind of want one clearinghouse of information. Is there
that? Yeah, that leeflcares.com website, leeflcares.com. That's really a great website where you can find all of this information. And then you can find links to, for instance, the United Way. We partnered with them on a child care voucher program. So you can find the link to that on this website as well. And you're right. I mean, one of the big things that this COVID-19 pandemic has forced us to do as a county is really up our game. We created social media pages that we actually never had before. We created websites we never had before. And we had to learn how to get used to doing press conferences and all sorts of Facebook Lives.
Standing 6 feet apart.
And we
Zoom.
Yeah, things that we'd never done before. And we really have ramped up in the last 2 months to a point where I think we're serving the public really well now.
So I asked Heather this question before. The short-term rental thing was a big thing on the beach and everywhere in Florida. Were you surprised when the governor had the press conference and said the counties have to submit plans, or you guys kind of knew that was coming and you're already working on it?
Well, I was really happy when he left a lot of that up to the counties. I feel like there is no one size fits all approach, especially in Florida, where you've got 67 counties and all of them are different. I mean, there are some counties that still throughout this whole thing have had very few cases.
Right.
And for them to be completely shut down the same way that Miami-Dade and Broward and Palm Beach County were, that seemed unfair to them. And they were very unhappy about it. So I liked that. Here in Lee County, where our positivity rates look good, our number of cases look good, our hospitalizations looked really good. It was great for us to be able to make that request to the state to say, hey, let's get our vacation rentals open. Let's try and get people back to work. And we're going to amend that one more time. We originally started with just in-state travel, and we got some feedback that wasn't going to be enough help for the vacation rental owners. So then we took a look at what some of the other counties throughout the state of Florida did. And they turned in plans that allowed travel from everywhere, but like states with, I think it was like 7 per 100,000 cases or something like that. So that was all tied to a CDC chart and everything like that. We found that was even a little too hard for vacation rental owners to interpret. So we put in one more amendment now that basically follows directly with the governor's executive order. The governor identified several states in his executive order that we did not want to see travel from. And so we've said, vacation rentals, we'd like them to be able to take reservations except for these states the governor specifically enumerated as states that he didn't.
So New York, for an example.
Yeah.
So somebody can come to Florida from New York. They can't stay at a vacation rental, but they can go to a hotel.
And that's a real problem. That's one of those things that I don't think this whole essential versus non-essential thing was ever the right way to go. I don't think, picking a winner and a loser was the right way to go. I think, I understand why we did it, but I think for anybody who earns a paycheck, that paycheck's essential to them. That's regardless of what they do for a living, they need that money to survive.
Do you hear more from people that say, again, I asked this to Heather, that we need to get this economy open faster, or you're moving too fast, people are going to get sick and people are going to die?
There's been a real shift in Lee County towards we want to get things open faster. And I feel that, and I want to help people with that. And so there's two things that that you have to think about. So the county can control county facilities, county parks, county things. The state controls like the businesses. So the state would control through the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, the restaurants, the hair salons, the nail salons, all those kind of things, even the vacation rentals and that kind of stuff. So I've said, look, I want to get Lee County open to the maximum that's allowable under whatever the governor has put in place. And right now that's a full phase 1. And so we've been striving to get Lee County and all the things that we control open to the maximum that's allowed. The governor, it's going to be up to him to talk about businesses. Because even if we said, hey, restaurants, game on, go back to 100%, the DBPR, the state regulating agency, could shut them down.
So how close? Go ahead.
How long? I mean, this is, you're prognosticating here. So how long do you think it's going to take to move through to the other phases so that, all of the businesses can get open?
Good question. The White House,
Thank you.
The White House said 14 days is what they wanted to see with no rebound in between each of the phases. So Governor DeSantis kind of did a partial phase 1 and went 14 days. And then he went to full phase 1 after 14 days. And that was on May 18th. So I'm not quite sure if we're 14 days from May 18th yet, but I think that's coming up, and it'll be interesting to see what he announces at that point.
Brian, how much damage has all this done to the bed tax revenue that comes to this county? I mean, nobody was here for 2 months.
Hotels dropped to like 10% occupancy or less. Obviously, the vacation rentals were completely down. We make about $36 million a year in bed tax. It's restricted money, so it can only be used to do things like beach renourishment. Pays the mortgage on the baseball stadiums, and it also helps us do. I can't remember the third category off the top of my head right now, but we use it for a lot of beach renourishment and beach projects, and then also to pay the mortgage on the baseball stadium. So that's down, but you'll have to remember we had quite a bit of reserves already. So we set aside a rainy day fund in that account because we know, look, we've had BP oil spills in the past. We've had
something's going to happen.
Hurricanes in the past. So we have a pretty healthy rainy day fund already of tourist development reserves. So if we can get back to business soon, I think we'll weather this storm and we'll be able to get
that's
through.
Great. I didn't know that. So that's good to know. I mean, you worry that without all that revenue coming in, something like beach nourishment wouldn't be able to be done, but that's great.
Now, we're talking about the hotel rentals, but, car rentals and car rental companies, one in particular, is really, really struggling. And then on top of people not being here, because I rented a car during all of this, and the guy's like, well, have your pick, because we have 5,000 extra cars over there at RSW. Then there was that big fire, and now you're hearing Hertz is hurting.
Anybody who's connected to the hospitality or tourism world is hurting. I mean, I don't think anybody really plans to go 2 months with absolutely no business.
Right.
And that's kind of what's happened to these folks. And so, Hertz isn't the only business that's hurting. A lot of them throughout Lee County have taken a beating. And my goal is to get people back in business as soon as possible, because I think the quicker they get back to business, I think the quicker they'll recover. And you may remember Lee County commissioners took a huge beating because we didn't want to do a shutdown. Before the governor's stay-at-home order, there was a lot of pressure placed on the county commission to do a local stay-at-home order, and we voted against that unanimously as a commission. In spite of even Representative Fitzenhagen was there saying, you guys need to do a shutdown order. And, we said, no, we think that there's no magic pill. There's no thing that you can do for 2 weeks and just get it over with. We said, let's try and find a way to live with it. Let's try and find a way to operate in this new world where we protect ourselves and take appropriate precautions. And it turns out now, 2 months later, that's really what we've kind of had to do.
You had to close it, or
no? What we've had to do is figure out a new way to live.
Do you think if you didn't see the spring, I'll never forget that press conference you had where you told them to go home. Do you think if you didn't see that, you might have still had a chance to keep it open? Or was it just too much pressure?
Getting the spring breakers out of here was the right thing to do at
For
that
sure.
point. I hated that, right? I'm the chairman of the Tourist Development Council at that point, and I'm saying,
get out,
tourists leave, right? That was the weight of that, really weighed on me before we made that press conference announcement. But I think it was the right thing to do at the time. I do think that getting the beaches open when we did was the right call. And I'm glad that they're fully open today. I'm glad we haven't had to worry about putting any more restrictions on them. And quite frankly, my personal position is I'm not going to put those restrictions back ever until you can prove to me that being at the beach during a certain number of hours is what is driving an infection. Then no, I want to be science and data driven. And you know, look, I brought some other charts too to show you, you know, you look at the hospitalizations for the month of May. This is the month of May. The orange line is the trend line. It's the 14-day moving average. I mean, that looks pretty flat. You know, the average patients hospitalized on May 4th when things started to open up was 80. The average patients hospitalized as of yesterday was 93. We've got a 1,500 bed hospital system that has been largely empty over the last 2 months.
People have been scared.
But, you know, we, you know, so we have the capacity to handle things. And so I think it's important to watch the numbers and make decisions based on the numbers. And so I'm really proud of Lee Health. They reported yesterday that they've discharged 511 patients over the whole course of this pandemic. You know, we never talk about that number, about the people who are recovering. And I think that's really great, you know, and unfortunately, some people have died. Unfortunately, some people have gotten very sick. And we're happy for the ones that have recovered, and we grieve for the ones that we've lost. And we can do both at the same time. We can be compassionate and care about that, but we can also be compassionate and care about the people who need to get back to work.
You've been down to the beach a few times. Have you, what's your opinion on how people are social distancing or partying or whatever they're doing? What's your view?
Personally, I think they're doing a great job. I mean, I think they're doing a great job, and the numbers don't lie. I mean, we've had this in effect for a month now and haven't seen a spike in hospitalizations. So I think they're doing a good job. I think when you're outdoors, it's a much lower risk environment to transmit the virus anyways. So I think that's a good thing. And, you know, I think we just need to keep the course and try and get things going.
Should the 4th of July fireworks go off?
You know, we've been talking with the town of Fort Myers Beach about that. I don't think Lee County's going to have a problem with that. I think everybody knows at this point what to do to protect themselves. And some people are willing to take a little more risk than others. And, you know, this is still America. If you want to, go for it. I don't think the government should have to hold your hand, you know, every step of the way.
So on a couple of quick local issues, is the traffic coming to the beach ever going to get better, in your opinion? Is there any plan that could ever be? There
is a plan.
Okay.
There is a plan, and it looks really goofy on paper. I've seen it. It's an interesting looking roundabout that's kind of oval shaped that our Department of Transportation has come up with. And when you look at it, it looks weird. But when they run the model and show you the traffic flow, it actually moves.
I wonder if it's like, because there's, we live out in Gateway, and at Daniels and 82, there's like this huge
I don't think
roundabout
it's like that,
cloverleaf thing going on, and
where nobody stops.
Yeah, and you're like, how is this? Oh, this is how this works, and you just keep on going, and it's great.
But you're talking about at the base of the bridge, right?
Yeah. So we've got, you know, the Seafarers Plaza property over here. We could use some of that. We could use maybe just the sliver of the Crescent Beach Family Park here, and we could do an interesting configuration of the intersection that would get the traffic moving. It's never going to be perfect, especially at the very height of season. But what they're saying is this roundabout would work maybe 9 months out of the year, you know, when we're not in the very peak of season, to try and keep traffic moving.
But there's no way to change anything coming
from
the other side of the bridge. I mean, you got what you got, right?
I think it's all part of, it's actually all part of a system that they're, you know, FDOT, the Florida Department of Transportation, has recommended doing some things with intersections on the other side of the bridge and working on that alternating light. And so we're trying to put all these different things in place, including 3 stoplights that are going to go down here near Times Square. We're trying to figure out ways to give people chances to cross the street where they don't interrupt traffic. We're trying to figure out ways to keep the traffic moving without stopping.
Well, yeah, one of the biggest problems is the people crossing the street everywhere. I mean, and I think Margaritaville, when that ever goes in, will eliminate some of the ways to cross the street. That's what they're hoping. So what do you think about Margaritaville?
You got to remember, I have a holistic county view, and I'm a guy who grew up here. I live in Cape Coral. I love it. I think it's
I thought he was going to say, I'm not going to comment on it, but
I think it's going to be great for the beach. I mean, look, I know that Fort Myers Beach actually became a town because Diamond Head you know, but Diamond Head is fantastic.
Yes.
I've stayed there a couple times. I think they've really added to the beach and to the town. And I think Margaritaville will add to the town as well. And I think, you know, will it be different? Sure, it'll be different. But, you know, I grew up here when Crescent Beach Family Park was hotels. It was like a Days Inn for my whole life until Hurricane Charlie hit. And so things have changed over time, and they've always changed for the better. And I'll tell you, it's an anecdotal experience that I had, but I was at the Publix on Fort Myers Beach a couple months back, listening to some tourists talk to each other at the deli counter. They didn't know who I was, and they were talking to each other, and they said, "Hey, you know, it looks kind of run down towards the base of the bridge." And I thought, wow, I don't want that to be the first impression that tourists have. And so I think new construction down here will help kind of lift the whole area up. And I think it'll be great synergy for the entire beach because, you know, look at Orlando. You go stay in one resort in Orlando and you see all the other resorts and they all succeed. Right. None of them fail together. They all work together. And you may not go back to the same resort next time because you saw another one you wanted to try.
Great. What's the relationship like between the county and the government here on the beach right now?
I think it's good. I think it's really good. I think you got a couple great new additions to your council down here that I just really have enjoyed getting to work with. And I think it's good. We're going to move forward. You know, look, in the heat of battle, when we talk about hurricanes or any other disaster, it always gets messy. And you know, the important thing is to understand that everybody has the right intention. They're all coming from the right place. Everybody was trying to protect the residents that they serve. We just had different ideas on how to do it. And at the end of the day, once you're through the mess, then it's important to come back together and realize that you're serving the same people and you're trying to help the same people.
I just, not to be a Debbie Downer, but you brought up a hurricane and we're getting ready to go into hurricane season and they're calling for an active hurricane season. Is the county sort of ramping up and getting prepared for if something were like that were to come up in addition to the COVID thing? I mean, this is like...
Of course, you know, we always prepare. We do. We always prepare. We've got a fantastic emergency management director. His name is Lee Mayfield. His father was actually the director. Max Mayfield was the director of the National Hurricane Center. So we're very well prepared. We're thinking about that. I think the one thing that I want people to take home right now, though, as we think about hurricane season is if you live outside of a flood zone, so you're not in a flood zone, and you're in a newer house, a house that's been built since 2000 when the most advanced hurricane codes have gone into place, you're probably okay to shelter in place. In fact, you should think about either getting out of town and leaving the state or sheltering in that house if you're not going to flood, if it's a newer house built to the latest hurricane codes. The hurricane shelters are meant to basically just keep you alive. When we had Hurricane Irma come through, we had 34,000 people go to the shelters, and then they complained that it wasn't very comfortable in there. Well, they're not meant to be a resort. They're not meant to be a place to stay. They're really meant to keep you alive through the storm.
So you can go back to your house.
So you can go back to your houses. And that's what's going to happen again if we have another hurricane. So, you know, I think as you're making your hurricane plan for this year, think first of where could I evacuate to out of state? Then think second about if my house is out of a flood zone and it's strong enough, how could I shelter in place? And then if you have no other resort than that, the shelter should be a shelter of last resort. It's a place where you could come where we will keep you alive.
Great. So what one county issue is going on outside the beach that people might not know about that you're working on that you're excited about?
Oh, man. Well, you know, we still, believe it or not, in the middle of all this, we still care a lot about water quality and trying to keep the water clean. You know, I sent a letter. Actually, I'm going to draft a letter and get it approved by the board, hopefully Tuesday, to send up to the folks in Washington to talk about how we feel about the Water Resources Development Act, which is, you know, the next act that moves the Everglades restoration plan along. And, you know, my message to the folks in Washington there is, you know, Lee County and the folks on the West Coast, we want to stay out of the water fight. We want to take the high road. There's a water fight in Florida that has gone on for generations between ag and between the, you know, the environmental activists. We say, look, we don't want to get into the fight. What we want is there's a certain amount of beneficial discharges we need during the dry season to keep our salinity levels down and to keep our water looking good. We'd like those. And then during the wet season, we'd like you to just cut off the discharges because we already get way too much fresh water from just the rain and the local runoff.
Sounds pretty simple.
Yeah. And so if you can accomplish that, we're cool with you guys continuing your fight on the other side.
What's Governor DeSantis's grade right now?
What's his grade right now? I'll tell you what, he's done a good job. He has done a good job. He's a person who, like he says, marches to the beat of his own drum. So it's a much different management style than we saw under Governor Scott. Governor Scott, you had his cell phone number, and he would pick it up and answer it and talk to you at any time.
No kidding.
Governor DeSantis operates differently than that. But boy, when you look at some of the moves he made when it comes to the nursing homes, when it comes to being really strategic about what to do with the safer at home order, I think he did a good job. And I think the results, like I said, speak for themselves.
President Trump, what's his grade?
I think he's done a good job too. You know, I mean, obviously you can nitpick and find little things that you disagree with, but man, he's been the president we've needed for this time, you know, and I think that's what you've seen with presidents throughout the years, throughout history. Each president has his or her own time, you know, and this was his time to come in, to try and root out the corruption, to try and be the tough guy that we needed to stick up for the American people. And I think he's done well with that.
You saw something, and we all saw something in Minneapolis, and you posted something about it on Facebook. I wanted you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I want to say, you know, first of all, we love law enforcement. And as we said earlier, you know, there are no ways you can just generalize a whole group of people. Not all cops are bad. You know, not all black people are, you know, what you're seeing on TV right now with the looting and that kind of stuff. We need to not generalize and not stereotype people, but we need to respect each other. And what happened there with that one incident, I think they've made the right call to make an arrest there. And I think they've, you know, certainly justice needs to be served there.
My worry is that that law enforcement has to deal with another issue that, you know, they put their lives on the line all the time. Obviously, that guy was wrong, and you can't explain 8 minutes of that for any code or anything that you're manual or anything. But now law enforcement has to feel like they have to watch their back even more because it's made so many people, rightly so, it's made them angry.
Yeah, and that's what we need to remember, that law enforcement officers, the vast majority of them, are doing a fantastic job. They have tremendous hearts, and they're trying to serve and protect all of us. And I really honestly am grateful for the fact that they're willing to get up and do that job every day and keep us safe. And growing up here, you know, that's one of the reasons why I came back after that stint in Missouri, was because this area's just always felt safe to me. Yep. It's always felt like home. And I think it's because of the great law enforcement officers that we have.
Any other questions here?
No, I think we should let him.
I know everybody's giving us the thing. Last question, 2022 will, you don't get term limit out of the county, right? You can run forever.
Interesting thing. We do have term limits. I was the guy who brought them forward. In 2014, I brought forward term limits for county commissioners. We did 3 consecutive 4-year terms. So it's 12 years. So when that got passed in 2014, it applied to your next term that you were elected for, because it couldn't be retroactive. So the first term that it applied to for me is my 2018 term. I could, Lord willing, if y'all want me, I could be here till 2030. I'll see whatever the good Lord has for me, though. I have enjoyed serving y'all. I really have. It's still a privilege and a pleasure to do this, even through some of the toughest times. And these last few months have been the toughest times.
Would you like to run for higher office?
If that's what y'all want, and if that's what God has planned for me, I'd be happy to do it.
Great answer. Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on, Brian. We really appreciate everything you've done for us, and you coming on the show and spending all this time with us. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you for everything you do with the county too. Thank you.
You too.
Brian Hamman, everybody, the Lee County Commission Chairman. We appreciate Brian's time. He's awesome. And are they clapping?
No, you need
big crowd. The crowd is clapping, and he was great.
He was great.
Very upbeat and happy. And
they both work.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think his age is? He looks like he's still in his 40s. Would you guess his age?
Yeah, I would say
still pretty young.
Yeah, he's young.
You think he'll run for higher office?
I think his answer leaves that opportunity.
I'm asking
open.
you. I'm not asking you to give me the same answer. I got his answer. Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, we appreciate you all sticking in here for